This is the Motivated Medic Podcast. My mission is to inspire you to care for those you encounter throughout and beyond your career with passion, intentionality, and humility.
Do what you can when you can. Do it. Do what you can when you can. Do it.
Hey, this is Tony Falzone, the Motivated Medic. Today we're going to be talking about eyes in the dark, so stay tuned.
Do what you can when you can. Do what you can do when you
So I've got kind of a funny story. It was funny after the fact. But so I went on a run this morning, got ready. It's like 4:45 in the morning. It's dark out, and so I put all my reflective gear on. I wear a headlamp at night, or in this case in the morning, and go outside. Get my heart rate monitor all squared away and get ready to run. So as I'm walking out the driveway, we live in a downtown area, so it's it's populated and everything. So when it comes to critters out, at that time of the night, your average house cat or maybe a stray dog is about what you'll see, if you see them. It's more common the neighborhood cats are just lurking around like they do. And as I put my headlamp on and press the button, turned it on, and of course there's Miss Betty's cat right across the street, and I start to scan to my right as I'm going to go that direction down the road, and all of a sudden I see these huge eyes looking at me, and I just lock eyes, and it's like time just stopped because here I am. Nobody else is on the road. There aren't even cars driving on the road at that time, not where I live. And there's these big eyes, probably about 30 to 40 feet away from me, staring at me. And my heart just stops. It just stops. My palms get sweaty, and I'm like, all of this is happening in like a matter of milliseconds. Like, all right, a few things are going to happen. Either whatever that is going to come after me and possibly injure me or even kill me. I'm going to go after it because my adrenaline is about to kick into high gear here. Or I'm going to casually find out what this is, and maybe we'll meet in the middle. So after I realized that, okay, this is just a really odd thing. It doesn't look like a human being. Just the green effect or bluish effect of the eyeballs that were reflecting back at me. And so I start to very slowly, after I compose myself, walk towards whatever this is. And it's not in the road. It's just off to the side of the road. We've got a little stream that runs, not too far from the house. And that's where this was. This was down on the bank of that stream. And that stream goes goes for a few miles and connects to one of the other larger bodies of running water in our area, and then eventually goes into the mountains. So, like I said, it's not common for something of a large size to be in the downtown area. However, a couple years ago, we had a very large black bear, and that kind of flashed into my memory at that point in time when this thing is staring at me, and I'm staring at it. Well, as I, start to get a little closer, and there's no street lights in this immediate area because there's a tree canopy, and so it was, it was dark. It was 4:30 in the morning. I start to see a silhouette from the ambient glow of the house lights of the residents, just about 100 feet beyond where this thing is standing. And I get a little closer, and my heart's racing, man. At this point, I'm going to town, and haven't even started running yet. My heart's already probably I think it was like over 110. And I get a little closer, and eventually I see a silhouette of a white-tailed deer. It was a doe, wasn't a buck or anything like that. And of course, as I get closer, it's I spook it, and it runs off down the creek and back to who knows where. And after I just kind of walk down the creek, and of course I'm like on high alert now, so every tiny little twig breaking and little sound in the stream has got me on. I've got high sensitivity levels going on now, and I keep on going on my run. And as I start my run, I just had to laugh. I'm like, you know what? I got to do a podcast on this because this is so applicable to where I am at right now. I went out for a run in a very familiar place. I've lived in this area for quite a few years now. Went out on a run, been down this road many, many times on runs when it's pitch black, raining, out in the thunderstorm. This is familiar territory. Where I was going was familiar territory. And I came upon something that was not familiar. And the alarm sounded because I had no idea what this was. These were eyes in the dark, and I didn't know what to do about them. So I want to talk about that. We do a lot of things in our career. We train for the unthinkable. You think about the fire department. I was in the fire department for a while. Started an excellent volunteer fire department in Hopewell, New Jersey, Station 52, and that was kind of my upbringing into emergency services. They brought me up, they groomed me. I was right out of high school, didn't really have a plan at that point in time. But they took me under their wing, and that's I attribute where I am today based on their influence in my life. But we train for the unthinkable. You think of your hazmat operations. You think about your tactical situations when it comes to law enforcement or the military, and your immediate action drills and those kinds of things. And so you plan for things that are very low frequency but extremely high risk. And I gotta say, as I get older, these events that are typically lower frequency are becoming a little bit more frequent. What do I mean by that? So, think about the more you drive a car. The more you get in the car, the more you increase your risk for getting into an accident. The more times that you do something or that you're involved in something, the higher the risk of you being involved in another situation or incident than you would be if you weren't doing that on a consistent basis. And the same thing happens as we live, as we go throughout our careers, our lives. We have a greater chance of something happening or us being a part of something, whether it's positive or negative. As we go through our own personal lives and especially with family members and friends, as we get older, there are certain seasons that you are going to approach. There are certain seasons that you are going to be in eventually. And this is going to happen in those familiar places, in those places of comfort. So as you're going for your jog in your life or your run in your career, you are going to experience things that you didn't expect to find or you didn't expect to come upon in familiar territory. You need to be able to evaluate the situation. So when you do come upon that instance of, what in the world is that? That looks a whole lot bigger, scarier, much more intense than anything I've ever seen in my comfort zone. And if you are not training yourself to expect situations like that, my friend, you're going to be in for a whole lot of surprise and extra hurt or extra agony. So as we develop in our careers, you need to anticipate failures. You need to anticipate unsuccess. You need to anticipate things that are going to go wrong. And I think of the test pilot Tony LaVere Fred Jeffries brought this up in one of his talks when I was at the Future Flight Crew um, program in Boston at Boston MedFlight, and he talked about how Tony Levere would anticipate failure in his, as a test pilot. He would anticipate something is going to go wrong on this flight, not as a depressed state of a pessimistic type of attitude. He said, okay, this is something new, and this is something, this is different or experimental, whatever the case is, and I'm anticipating failure. So when failure occurs, or if failure occurs, I'm not surprised, and I can navigate through whatever is occurring and get through it. We need to do the same thing in our lives and our careers. Not dwell on the fact that, woe is me, something's going to go wrong today because I showed up to work, or something's going to negatively impact my life because this is just life. Everybody has to deal with something wrong at some point. We can't all have a good life. I don't mean to get into the doldrums and depressed state. That's not the intention of this. My purpose in bringing this up is the fact that you need to prepare for something to go wrong, or something to go differently than what you have planned. You need to anticipate that throughout your life and throughout your career. Part of anticipating is being able to evaluate the situation. When I went on that run and I saw those eyes, I was like, initially it stopped me dead in my tracks, because we don't have deer in downtown. It's like that doesn't happen until it actually happened. So yes, I stopped in my tracks, but then I started to evaluate the situation. It's like, okay, is this a threat? Is this something that I have to be on high alert, ready to fight, ready to defend my life, my territory, my turf? What's going on here? And as I started to process through what the reality of a threat being right there at that moment, I developed a conclusion of, this is probably going to be a lower chance of something that's a threat versus this is an abnormal circumstance or situation, and I'm going to push the envelope a little bit in evaluating what this is. And that's exactly what I did. I, started to take a couple steps cautiously towards what this was, because, could it have been a bear? It easily could have been. Could it have been, some kind of a axe murderer that was 7 foot tall or whatever? And it could have been, but it wasn't. And being familiar with my territory and being, looking at the reality of what's the chance. And starting to look at the risk factors, I was like, well, and that's where I started to proceed, and eventually saw that, yes, this is a deer. I did not go based on my emotions to handle the situation. Now, the emotions were very real and very raw, because there was an instant amount of fear and caution that came about, and those are defense mechanisms that we have, the fight or flight. My palms got sweaty, my breathing became a little bit more intense as my body was preparing for, okay, am I going to have to do something here, or am I going to have to run? Either way, my body automatically went into that, preparation mode, gearing up. So evaluating the situation, is this a threat, or is this something that, yes, you're on high alert, but you need to navigate through this and react in a different manner. And, I mentioned emotions. This leads me to that area. A lot of times when we encounter something that is not familiar. It's a surprise. All of a sudden we begin to emote. We begin to get emotional about the situation. That driver that cuts you off on the highway, that person at the checkout counter that has 30 things in a 15 limit express lane. It really brings about emotions. You have a family member that gets suddenly ill. Those emotions they're real, and recognizing that you are going to have those emotions in those situations is important. It's key on how you are going to respond. It's the same thing when we're at work. You go to work. I'm a flight paramedic. I respond to a call. Whether it's a motor vehicle accident, maybe it's chest pain, heart attack, a stroke, whatever it is. I prepare myself for the particular type of call and look at the principles, look at the facts of the matter. But if I respond emotionally to, maybe a 4-year-old getting hit by a car, am I going to be able to properly navigate through that situation and treat that patient? No. Is it wrong to have those emotions? It's not, but there's a time and a place to have emotions, and reacting with your emotions and acting on your emotions is where the difference lies. We're taught to act like a duck. Look cool and collective on the surface, but be swimming like crazy underneath the surface. And that's the same thing here. Is you need to respond and have the anticipation of this is a very good chance of happening. If you have family, the chance of something happening to them is there. So looking at the principles, not the emotions, and recalling your principles and how you should be, uh, being active and not reactive is important. I mentioned towards the beginning of the podcast that that's where I'm at. The stage of life is where I'm at. Um, my dad, about 2.5 years ago, had a massive stroke, a massive ischemic stroke, and he's declined now to the point to where he can't walk. He can't do for himself. He can't even get up and go to the bathroom. And you know, my dad's in his mid 60s. I never expected any of this to occur. He never expected any of this to occur. He was a music teacher for many years as I was growing up. He did a lot of driving for an executive charter bus company during the summers when he wasn't teaching, or throughout the year on breaks and things like that. Um, and this is a this has affected his speech. It's affected his pain tolerance. It's affected everything. Um, Basic tasks, so much as feeding himself, have become extremely difficult. And as he's been declining in his ability to do things, we my mom made the decision to, well, let's go ahead and get him more comfortable, get him more, um, you know, in a situation to where he can relax better. And as he's progressing, and so he is now on under hospice care. And there's no set date of, okay, this is when Dad's not going to be here anymore. This is, it's just a let's let's optimize his comfort. But I gotta tell you, that's when we made that decision, and we talked about it. My mom made that decision ultimately, as his main care provider. Um, that was a uh, not necessarily a surprise, in the sense of a life event, but it was from 2.5 years ago to now. All of this was unplanned in familiar territory. And so, this has been a big deal going forward. And, we've had a lot of life events in the past few months. Some, you know, excellent. Like, me now getting into my dream career, so to speak, as a flight medic, and going through the process that I am, and learning and orienting and everything else. But there's been a lot of other things that's like, well, didn't expect that. Certain health conditions with certain family members that just we never anticipated because it's never happened. And even though we're in familiar territory, it's like, well, I guess we have to do that now. So this has caused me to think about, I know I'm not the only person in this circumstance. There's people every day dealing with the death of a loved one, dealing with the death of a friend, or an illness, whether it's terminal or something that just sets them back, or maybe it's themselves. That it's like they got sick, they got injured, and now they're like, well, now what? This happened. Now what? And it can be very easy to slip into a depressed state of woe is me, or well, nothing positive is going to come about this. And that's like I was talking about, your emotions. It's very easy to get caught up in those. It's very easy to start dwelling on the negatives instead of looking at the positives. And the whole Pollyanna mentality of there's always something good in a situation. As cliche as that scenario is, if you look for the bad, you're gonna find it. If you look for the bad, you're gonna find it. But if you look for the good, it's there. Sometimes you may have to look a lot harder, but it's there. There is a positive to most any situation. Um, a lot of times you don't see that right away. Sometimes something happens. Maybe it's the death of a coworker, and obviously the death of a coworker is not a positive thing. The death of a friend or a family member, that's not a positive event per se. Um, if it's somebody that's been sick for a long time, and this is kind of some closure, yeah, that could be one thing. But them getting sick, or a car accident, and they die, that's not a positive event. That's not a positive thing, a positive occurrence. But maybe in 4, 6, 10, 15 years, something happens because of that event that's good. Maybe they had a life insurance policy that helped somebody else because they set up a scholarship fund, or something came about because of that situation that helped somebody else. And that's a positive thing. So even though it may not be at that moment in time, and you're struggling to find out why am I seeing this? What are these lights and these eyes in the dark? This unfamiliar image in the dark that's got me scared out of my mind, and I'm clenching my fists, I'm sweating bullets, my heart rate's up, I'm breathing a lot faster. What is this, and how do I navigate that? And that's where you need to fall back on the principles of handling a situation. And then that, like I was talking about with the planning, you need to plan for something to go wrong. If you have family, if you have young kids, you're married, you need to plan for the event. When you look at the truth of the matter during those trials, but we need to plan. Another thing about all of this is have a support system. People will perceive, if you're going through something, you're going through a situation, and all of a sudden, hey, Tony's not talking very much, or man, he's upset at work. He used to love what he did, the love what you do preaching guy, and now he doesn't. Now he hates it. What's wrong there? What's changed that dynamic? Because obviously something has changed. And this is a lot of where I talked about navigating burnout in my talk in West Virginia. Recognizing when somebody is going through a certain circumstance or situation is important, and especially if you are a friend of theirs, and you don't have to be a good friend, but if you're a friend and you notice that there's a change, it may be time to ask the question, "Hey, are you okay? what's is there something going on? And if you are a good friend or maybe a family member, you're part of their support system, whether you like it or not. You are in their um, their life. You're somebody along their journey, and it's okay to ask the question, "Are you okay?" And if you're that person that's having that tough time, it's okay for them to ask that question, "Are you okay?" It's not being malicious. It's not being nosy. Now, there are those people that are nosy and they're just looking for a story to have. Um, but the majority of people, if they're asking that question, they're concerned. They're genuinely concerned. Do you have to spill the entire beans? No. But having a support system, especially with somebody that you can tell everything to or most everything to, is important. Whether it's your spouse or a best friend, a parent, sibling, whatever it is, you need to be able to open up. You need to be able to unwind or unravel what's going on, work through those emotions in a safe place to where that's appropriate. And when you're in a situation where decisions need to be made, that is not the time to be emotional. They say after a close loved one dies or a spouse dies, the first year after they die, to not make any major decisions. Why? Because you're 9 times out of 10 you're going to make it based on emotion. So that's why we're encouraged to make the preparations and the plans for an event like that before the event happens. Have the life insurance in place. Have talk about if you die, what do you want to do? How are you going to navigate through this? As a father and a husband of younger kids, I've got to think about, well, what's going to happen to my wife and my children? What's going to happen to our home and all the bills? And you gotta think about that. So open up to your support system and have that conversation and have a plan. Now, you may be in a good place right now, and this leads me to this discussion of everything's going right. Everything's going well. Your family's healthy, you're healthy, the job is going well, and you are loving what you do, and you're at a point in your life in your career where it's like, this is awesome. And this is exactly the place where you need to plan for failure, or you need to plan for an unplanned event, like the death of a coworker. And I'm not saying this to be morbid or whatever, but guys, this is reality. This is reality. This is life. I mean, you look around, especially if you're a paramedic, an EMT, or a nurse, physician, if you work in emergency services or healthcare in general. What do? We take care of people that are sick, that are injured, that are dying. And the fact of the matter is, you might be in a good place right now, and that's great, but you need to plan for that event. Don't be on such a cloud nine, experience and emotional high, to where you forget that, well, something might happen tomorrow. Something might happen next week. Something might happen next year, and you don't plan for it. And then when it happens, it's like, oh my gosh, I didn't see this coming. And it may be a certain circumstance where, no, you didn't see this coming. This is completely out of left field. But understanding that, the basic principles of, okay, what do I do if something happens? If there's an emergency in place. I think about something that occurred recently with me, and my wife called me and she was frantic about the situation, and initially I was like, huh, that's not cool. But then I looked at everything. I was like, okay, well, I know this to be true and this to be true and this to be true. Let me make some phone calls. We'll figure it out. And within 15 minutes, I had the answer that I thought I had, and looked at the facts of the matter, and everything was fine and everything worked out. But had I not known all of that, and I started freaking out and going all crazy, for one, that wouldn't have benefited her, because it would have definitely increased her emotions and her stress level about the situation. but it would not have helped me navigate that situation properly. And though the outcome would have still been the same, how much more stress would I have added to that situation had I just gone off, flying off the handle with emotions versus looking at the facts of the matter? So have a plan in place. Be prepared emotionally for something to occur so that you can navigate through that situation with integrity, with composure. And I'm not saying to not have emotions, but there's a time and a place for emotions to have their place. And you will not be able to navigate through an emergent situation or a difficult circumstance if those emotions are driving you. Now, before I end this episode, and I apologize for the lengthiness of this because this is longer than my typical podcast. I've just got to say this, and some of you may have seen the Facebook post that I put up. Live life to the fullest. Don't wait for someone to get sick or die before you say make the most of each moment. You should be making the most of each moment right now. You have life. Why wait to live it to the potential you have been given, until something happens? Dig in, be motivated, inspire someone, and do it today. Make somebody smile. Be courteous. Be faithful. Have mercy on someone that doesn't deserve it. Love somebody that doesn't deserve your love. Love those who love you more than you want to. Love them each day like it was their last here on earth. Be passionate, not passive. Be an advocate, not an aggressor. Give someone a chance. And maybe that chance is not the chance you were given, but you have the opportunity to give them one. Do it. Be humble. Love mercy. Be gracious. Do these things, and I promise you that you will make the most of each and every day you have here on this planet. Love what you do. Find the things that make an impact in somebody's life and focus on that. I hope everybody's doing well. I hope you're enjoying what you do, and if you don't, evaluate your situation. Look at why that is. Stay safe. Be savvy. Be a motivated individual, motivated medic, motivated nurse. Wherever you're at, be motivated in that position in your life. Until next time, this is the Motivated Medic signing out.
When it's too much to handle, do what you can do when you can do. Mama, I got your back when it's too hot to handle.